So there is Colts news to get to within just this morning in general. You knew going into today that there was going to be a newsy. I don't even know if that's a word, but it was going to be a newsy week for the Colts. And coming off a preseason game, I was there. I was there for the preseason game against Green Bay. And, well, I was there for about a quarter and a half. And I don't know that you break down too much from that game except for the questions that now are on the horizon. But we do know this. There are two queryisms, Eddie, that I'm most proud of. And only two. So I shouldn't even say that I'm most proud of them. There are two queryisms that I'm proud of.
The 2025 guy.
That is one. And the other
sunglasses and
football.
Phone chargers?
Correct. I have always said, what is the thing, if you listen to this show that you've heard me say before, 100 times I've said it.
It was brought up on the morning show, Jake, too. I don't know if you caught it.
Was it really?
Well, not in this regard.
Somebody dropped their
sunglasses in a porta potty.
Yeah, well, then you go get new sunglasses. I've wondered this: how much, if you dropped your wallet into a porta potty, how much cash has to be in it for you to be willing to go in there? It's done at that point, right? But nonetheless,
yeah, it's well, I don't know. It's the wallet, so I don't want someone stealing my personal life.
I totally get
info.
it. But you'd need a fishing net. Okay, the Colts have signed a cornerback, and what have I always said? Cornerbacks and offensive linemen are like sunglasses and cell phone chargers. You can never have too many, because every time you think that you have the one that you love, it breaks, you lose it, you get home from dinner and realize it was back at the restaurant, you go back, there's no trace of it, etc. Same thing happens with those two positions in the National Football League. And the Colts, give them credit and give Chris Ballard credit. A year ago, there was a lot of question about the defensive back room for the Colts. Were they too inexperienced? Were they too young? Were they too on and on and on? Too raw? And Chris Ballard said, and I'm paraphrasing, look, I've got young guys, but I've got to see them play so we know what we have. And everybody kind of hem-hawed about that. He said the same thing about wide receiver a few years before that. And now, wide receiver, they put a lot of investment into it. They went out and they got as many pieces there as they could. And the wide receiver position is one that looks obviously deep and good for them. And you could say the same thing about corners and about safeties in the defensive backfield going into this season. It's one that they seem to have a surplus and some riches there. But the injury bug, as always happens with your cell phone chargers, happens. Just when you have one that you're like, I'm good, and then you look down and there's a frayed wire. Or you thought it looked like an Apple charger, but then you realize that it's called an Aplo, and you bought it at the gas station for $7.99, and it's got Chinese writing on it, and it lasted 3 months. Same thing happens with defensive backs. I mean, just the nature of running backwards in general, it lends itself towards vulnerability. So, the Colts today, with the situation with Juju Brents, with Jalen Jones, dinged up, they go out and they get Xavier Howard, who is a former Pro Bowler, 32 years old, played for the Miami Dolphins, and you say to yourself, well, okay, that's good. I mean, here's a guy that has numerous starts, 29 picks in his career, has experience. He also, early in his career, played underneath Lou Anarumo. So he is going to be familiar with, there's familiarity there both within he to the scheme and the coordinator to the player. But again, Eddie, what do we talk about when it comes to the Colts roster of bid stealers? Here's another one, right?
Well, I mean, have you looked at all the injuries they're dealing with right now?
I know.
19 in total. 22 if you factor in guys that are out for the year that weren't really factored into the roster at all.
it goes back to, and I don't, this is the easy, almost lazy narrative, I realize. But it goes back to the argument or the discussion or the debate that people are going to have of, does going light in training camp lend itself to injuries? Are you putting too much bubble wrap on it, and then all of a sudden once you take that off? I don't think that's the case. I don't, but I understand that people are going to ask that question. But nonetheless, let me get to the bigger story with the Colts and in general with sports in Indianapolis today. On Saturday evening, we went to a show at Rock the Ruins, which is a super cool venue, and saw Mo, which is kind of a jam band. Okay, I know nothing about Mo. I know nothing of Mo. Didn't know anything about it.
It's not Mo from Ohio?
What's that?
Not Mo from Ohio?
It is not Mo from Northwest Ohio, who drove over and played in our golf outing. Good dude. Not that Mo. But Mo, M-O-E. Larry and Curly were not there, but Mo was. They're from Buffalo, New York. They're a jam band. So we go to the show on Saturday evening, and it was obviously hot and humid all day on Saturday. And then, as it was forecasted to do so, it kind of not cooled off by any stretch. It wasn't cool out, but the humidity dropped a little bit, and it was a really pleasant evening. Around 7 o'clock, 7:30 when we got there, it was very pleasant. We're like, oh, it turned out to be a really nice night. And just when everything looked nice, and just when everything was, when you're enjoying this evening, all of a sudden, like a flip of a switch, the humidity was back. And then I felt like 10 mosquitoes on my leg, and it was super dark out. It was dark in general because it was nighttime, but like the moon lighting, like all of a sudden it was dark out. And we went from pleasant and placid and enjoyable to massive cloud cover and storm breakout in about 5 minutes. That's kind of what the situation for the Colts and the Fever both feel like right now, based on this weekend. Because in the case of the Colts, and maybe it's actually that the humidity is finally going to break and we're going to get some relief here, but the humidity that is, the cloud cover that is, the quarterback battle, I think, is about to finally get resolution. And for the Fever, everything was, and yes, I realize Caitlin Clark is out, and there's a lot of question of when is she going to return, but the injury bug once again rears its ugly head, and it does so with a player that has seemingly magnetized herself to injury of others. But you see the, Bria Hartley kind of rolling into Sophie Cunningham. Sophie Cunningham goes down with the right knee, and all of a sudden, just when things feel like for the Fever, there was this placidity and this calm nature about the way their season's gone. If you anticipated Caitlin Clark coming back and the other injuries they've had, but Kelsey Mitchell playing well, and now, boom, they have another key injury. Eddie, I heard you on the postgame show last night because the Fever were down in terms of their comeback as big as you can get. They come back, they force overtime, they win in overtime. That part is fabulous, and you knew going into it that they were just waiting for this reprieve in the schedule, but it is a terrible way to go into it with Sophie Cunningham now with an MRI scheduled for today.
Yep, we won't know exactly the extent of that injury for Sophie Cunningham. The 21-point comeback yesterday, largest comeback in franchise history. And whenever Stephanie White joins the program this week, Jake, I'm fascinated to get her response as to why or what made that so emotional, because I don't know if you saw the locker room footage on the Fever Twitter. She was pretty much in tears after that win by the Fever yesterday against the Connecticut Sun. And they're off today. It's a total off day. Then tomorrow's a recovery day for the Indiana Fever. They will practice on Wednesday, practice on Thursday, and then they will take on the Minnesota Lynx for the first of 3 times in the next 2.5 weeks on Friday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That coverage will start right here at 7:15, tip-off at 7:30.
The one other big event that took place over the weekend, and I'm curious of this. I understand and I respect people's hesitation and the polarization of LIV Golf, especially when the LIV Golf League was first announced and developed and the Saudi government, etc. Okay? And I saw a lot of people this weekend, though, Eddie, that went to it, and I noticed two things. And I'm curious from those that either went or those that refused to go, if my summary of LIV Golf is accurate. Let me spill out what I mean by that, and then folks can tell me one way or the other if I'm accurate or inaccurate. I think there are two camps of people here. I think there are actually three camps. Camp number one are the people that are like, I am not going to support this nor pay attention to it, nor even listen to it on the radio, and I apologize that we're discussing it right now for those folks because of the tie-in to the Saudi government and the political polarization of it, much of which is far beyond my level of comprehension or interest level of getting into the politics of that. And maybe that makes me complicit and naive. I don't know. I'm aware of that polarization. But I think there's a group of people that refuse to endorse, embrace, or support LIV Golf for that reason. Fair. I think there's a second group of people that are golf traditionalists that love the PGA, that love the different tournaments of the PGA and the rules of golf and approach on 17. And, it looks like someone has a flash camera and they're going to be removed. That group of traditionalists are opposed to LIV Golf because it's like, listen, golf has rules and etiquette and protocol, and a league that comes in and tries to disrupt all of that is sacrilegious to the game of golf. There's that group. Then there's group number three that I seem to see a lot of both on Saturday evening and then even yesterday, of people that I ran into who had been at the LIV Golf tournament and loved it. And it seemed to me that this is primarily, and this is very smart of LIV Golf, it seemed to me that this is a golf tournament that I'm not going to say exclusively, but appealed to and grabbed the attention of a 35 and under demographic more so than the PGA does, partially because it has a party-like vibe and atmosphere to it that takes itself almost less seriously than the PGA and its rules and etiquette. And so people are there and they're like, oh, man, it's great. Like we're drinking beer and wearing shorts and everybody's having fun and there's money flowing everywhere. And it seems like in the world today where sports in general, whether it be the NFL, whether it be IndyCar, whether it be Major League Baseball, whether it be the NBA, whatever, everybody is competing with and trying to stay on board with this roller coaster of the ever-changing entertainment and consumption cycle of where things are being distributed and how people are seeing it and the shorter attention spans and the go, fast-paced, upbeat lifestyle that people have and trying to reach into especially younger people. And it seems to me, and I know I sound old when I say that, but it seems to me that LIV has appeal for people like 35 and under more so than does the PGA. I may be totally wrong in that, but that's my outside observation. Eddie White, I believe, was he there this weekend, Eddie?
I know Eddie White went there on the opening day, and then he was there yesterday as well.
So I want to get his thoughts on whether or not that observation is accurate, because this is a this is a thing, right?
It just seems to me like LIV Golf is a little bit more catered toward the fan experience than the PGA Tour. I mean, LIV Golf has concerts and everything like that lead up, or there were concerts on whatever night that was, Thursday night. I don't know if the PGA Tour does that or not, but it just seems like it's more of like a charade for the fans that are in attendance than the PGA.
Right.
Whereas PGA is like you're a golf naturalist and enthusiast of like how it was, created and meant to be.
It was successful this weekend. I think LIV still has some television challenges because of the fact that their TV contracts, they're on FS1, FS2, Fox. They kind of move it around. Everybody has that issue, obviously. But that's one of the things we'll talk about today. But let's get to the real issue in hand, and that is the quarterback situation with the Colts. This is the week that we anticipate getting an answer on who it's going to be. And this has been kind of like when you go into a major election. When you go into a major election, you get the whole every day is different. Oh, no, the latest polls say this, the latest polls say that, et cetera, et cetera. And you're trying to gauge where things are. This quarterback battle for the Colts, I have what I'm convinced is a situation, to me, it feels like this is playing itself into an area that could be very problematic for the Colts. But I want to go back and evaluate this from the beginning. And everybody knows that I don't need to recap for everybody the history of the quarterback situation with the Colts and how we are here with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. But a year ago, when Anthony Richardson did the tap out and was removed from the starting spot at quarterback, at that time, and I probably knee-jerk reacted, but I'm not alone, but at that time I thought to myself, it's over. When you have a franchise quarterback that you drafted and you are now pulling him as the starter and benching him literally to like third string, there's no going back. There just isn't. And then they gave him another opportunity, and they bring in Daniel Jones. Everybody knows the story here. I don't need to go all the way back to that. But as we have evaluated in this quarterback competition, they're going to have an open competition. It's going to be an open season for quarterback in Indianapolis. We're going to bring in competition to push Anthony Richardson. And then that way, if Anthony Richardson doesn't get it, if the light doesn't click, then no problem. We have a guy that we can hand it over to. And so Richardson has Daniel Jones in the mix, and Daniel Jones is going through and he's doing the reps and everything else. Fine. And as we have talked about, and I've gone back and forth on this. I will admit I'm the goldfish at the end of the Faith No More video. I'm flopping all over the place. I get it. Guilty as charged. But the signals have been a little bit mixed as well. But when Jones came in, I literally thought to myself, Daniel Jones is going to be the starter week one because you don't sign a guy like that to $13 million just as a lesson plan. You don't. That's an expensive lesson plan. That's an expensive motivating tool. You can go out today. Instead of getting Daniel Jones, they should have just had Anthony Richardson set up a LinkedIn account and say, when you set up your LinkedIn account, you're going to get like 150 spam messages from people that are professional motivators, and just find one of those and sign up for their class. But instead, they spent $13 million to do exactly that, theoretically. So Jones comes in, but he doesn't do anything to separate himself. Richardson has competition there and doesn't really do anything to separate himself. And I watched on Saturday against Green Bay, and it's difficult there to assess properly because both of them are going – neither – the one thing that Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson have in common after their experience on Saturday and their numbers on Saturday is the fact that neither one of them were throwing against a single player who is designed to start this year in the NFL. Green Bay rested everybody. So Daniel Jones is going against second stringers. Richardson's going against second and third stringers. How much can you assess from that? But you can assess their rhythms. You can assess their comfort level, their body language, the way the rest of the huddle responds to them. And I didn't think either one of them did anything to really stand out and separate themselves. But Richardson at times, to me, looked like in the short throws, the layups, I thought he showed better feel and timing than we saw a year ago. And Daniel Jones, I thought, just looked kind of the same. I thought he had a couple of throws that were very suspect. He had a couple of nice throws to, I think he had one to Tyler Warren. The body language of both, again, there was nothing that jumped out at me where I went, wait a minute, that's a problem or that's a sign, that's a good sign. Neither one. Where you start to break it down and figure things out, and where I can get Freudian with it, which I'm about to do, is when you decipher the words of what was said by the people, not that are on the field in that competition, but those that are assessing that competition. And that's the area that we're going to dive into, because you had Carly Ursay-Gordon going on the television broadcast, talking with Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi, and I thought she was really good. I thought she was informative. I thought she was personable, detailed, went in depth in talking about and answering certain things to them. Shane Steichen afterwards said very little, which is Shane Steichen's entire MO, but yet in saying very little, he said a ton. Because, again, it's about deciphering what's said or not said. And, yes, we're reading tea leaves, and maybe by 2 o'clock today, it's all going to be for naught because they're going to come out and say, here's our guy. And sooner than later, we're probably going to know who that guy is. But one of those decisions for the Colts sends them into the pasture we expected, and one of those decisions for the Colts, if they make it, blows everything up. And it's fascinating to me that they are going to potentially make one of those decisions that is going to blow everything up and set you right back to square one. And I didn't think that was going to be the case until I heard some of these quotes, which we're going to play for you. And, Eddie, you were in here late night cutting all this audio up, right? You were burning the midnight oil.
I wish I could take credit, but I won't do that. Nathaniel Finch, Atticus, did all the work on that front. I was just the recipient of his work. I just distributed it to you.
Okay. Well, you could have taken credit there.
I know, but that's not who I am.
We'll get into all of it coming up in just a couple of minutes. On the show today, Mike Chappell joins us 1 o'clock. Eddie White will talk about the LIV experience at 1:30, and Pat Boylan, television voice of the Fever, at 2 o'clock to discuss exactly where they are now, not only with the Caitlin Clark situation, but taking advantage of a couple of days off. Sophie Cunningham, we will see if we get news over the course of this show on Sophie Cunningham and an MRI from today. Hey, Jake, I spent Friday at the LIV Golf with my brother. He and I are over 60. We had fun. Find it funny that there are people telling us, hush with the music blasting everywhere. Originally, he and I were not big fans of it, viewed them as trying to do harm to PGA, but time and new PGA stars have lessened this thought and impact. Almost view them as being a competitor of senior PGA Tour now. Interesting. Very interesting. We'll break it all down. I want you to hear what Carly Ursay-Gordon had to say. I want you to hear what Shane Steichen had to say. I want you to hear what Anthony Richardson had to say. And when you hear it, I want to know if you hear it the same way I do. We'll let you hear in their words, and we'll decipher it all next. Okay, so let's get into assessing this quarterback situation with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. The bottom line is this. If Anthony Richardson is the guy, then the only way that was not going to be the case is theoretically if Daniel Jones came in and outplayed him. And Daniel Jones has not done that. He just hadn't done it. It's not to say that Richardson's played terrible and Jones is neither one. They're both just flying along, giving you a 6 out of 10, right?
C's getting degrees, Jake. That's what they're doing.
Right. And in that case, Richardson is your guy because he is the guy that you still have the bigger question mark about. He is the guy that you invested in, that you gave a draft pick towards, that is your general manager's hand-picked franchise quarterback. And he's only had, 15 or 16 starts or whatever it is. And so, therefore, you feel like there's a higher ceiling and a bigger intrigue about him, okay? So, based on that information, you would say a tie goes to Anthony Richardson. But Carly Ursay-Gordon joined the television broadcast with Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi. And she discussed the quarterback situation, and I thought said a couple of very interesting things. Let's hear it.
It's the very expensive question, I think, that everyone's wondering about. And I think the best thing, this is one of the best camps we've had in quite a long time. And I think one of the things that we talked about in June was there's nothing that makes the good things rise to the surface better than competition. And I think having Daniel in here with Anthony, he's obviously had more experience than Anthony, but I think that room as a whole, they're competing in camp, but they are, they've each done things well. They've also made mistakes. So again, it's Shane is going to have a tough decision to make, but I feel confident he's going to make the right decision.
Okay. Two things interesting there. Number one, it's the expensive question. When you say that, what that means is it potentially has both financial and beyond that implication of which way the answer goes. And one of the areas to me that is the most costly about this decision, it is interesting to me that Daniel Jones' name stays in the mix. And the reason why is because, as Shane Steichen talked about, this is beyond simply production on the field. Here is Shane Steichen talking about the quarterback battle and on this being, is it just throwing accuracy and arm talent?
It's everything, right? The operation, the communication in the huddle, the checks, getting guys on the same page, the consistency of all that obviously is going to play a big factor in this.
Okay. So with that, when he says that, what he is saying is it's the stuff we don't see. And if it's the stuff we don't see, and I want to make very clear, none of this is a personal indictment on either of these guys. I don't know either of them personally. This is football conversation. And if this is about beyond what you see in terms of the statistics or the body language or the footwork or the arm rotation or the ball placement, if it's above and beyond that, and that's why Daniel Jones is in the mix, then that is an absolute indictment on Chris Ballard by Shane Steichen indirectly. Because what that is saying is Chris Ballard had to make the most important decision of his general manager career when everybody knew finally the time came, and Jim Irsay essentially said the time is now to select a franchise quarterback that is going to be the future that this franchise is going to ride with. Because we had Andrew Luck, and he retired. And, yes, Zach Kiefer has a fascinating column about Andrew Luck that he's going to talk about with J&B at 4 o'clock today, where Andrew Luck said that he wanted originally to play until he was 40 to 45 years old. But with all of that said, what this means is that Shane Steichen sees this as, look, There's more to it than what you folks can see. And what he is saying by saying that, if he goes with Daniel Jones, that's still a big if. But if his decision is Daniel Jones, then theoretically that decision is rooted in what you just heard right there. Shane Steichen is making it a point to tell you, the fans, and to tell the media that this battle is above and beyond simply the physical nature of playing the position of quarterback. And if that's the case, and he opts with Daniel Jones, what he is saying is Chris Ballard took a risk on a player that everyone said there was question mark about whether or not he had the experience and the maturity to understand everything going into being an NFL quarterback, and even through redirection of benching him and bringing him back, bringing in competition and trying to give him wake-up calls, he still is hitting the snooze button, and as a result, I'm going with Daniel Jones, and that means that, in my opinion, you can't go back from that. And that's an indictment on the ability to measure all aspects of the most important decision that Chris Ballard had to make as a general manager. Now, I don't think in any way, shape, or form that Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen have some sort of rift between them. I think they probably work very well together, but Steichen needs to win now. Who knows how long Ballard's leash is, but Steichen wants to win now, and he's going to look at it and say, you're asking me to make the decision, and if he goes with Daniel Jones, it's going to be for the reasons you just heard. Because from a ceiling standpoint in terms of on-field production, Richardson's is theoretically much higher and more intriguing. But back to the point about Steichen and Ballard. Carly Ursay-Gordon talked about having those two men, and she said something that I thought was a little bit nuanced, and yes, it's my job to armchair quarterback this, but I don't think in armchair quarterbacking this that I'm off base. She said something very interesting to me. Here she is talking about the relationship between Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. She references Rick. She's talking about Rick Venturi. She's talking to Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi on Saturday.
We are so grateful to have Chris and Shane because I think Rick can probably speak to this. If you're a head coach and you don't get along with your general manager and you don't trust them, it's a total nightmare. So I think the great thing about Chris and Shane is they don't always agree, but they discuss it, and I think they make better decisions because they each have a unique kind of approach that I think makes us better as a whole.
Okay. When she says, when you have a coach and a general manager, I'm paraphrasing, that don't see eye to eye or don't get along, I can't remember her exact wording there, it's a nightmare. I'm going to rephrase that. I'm going to repeat it. When you have a coach and a general manager that don't get along, don't see eye to eye, it's a nightmare. That's coming from somebody. She's not speaking hypothetically there. She's speaking from experience because this is a franchise that has seen a quarterback, that have seen a general manager and a head coach that did not get along and see eye to eye. And one of the errors of Jim Irsay was that press conference where he had Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano standing next to him, attached at the hip, kumbaya, and then they did not get along. They did not see eye to eye. And guess what? That turmoil led to, obviously, a complete division. It led to a general manager and a head coach that did not get along with one another. We can sit here and go till the cows come home on which one of those two men was at fault, which one was whatever. But the reality is you then went through a process where you had that nightmare she's talking about. She's been through that before. And what she is saying right there is indirectly, I'm not going there again. I'm not going there again. But if Shane Steichen goes with Daniel Jones and not Anthony Richardson, does Chris Ballard then go back to him and go, look, I know that I gave you, the head coach, the authority to make this decision, but you have now taken my biggest decision that has been put on my plate and usurped it by saying that it goes above and beyond and it illuminates an area of weakness that I was supposed to have had in a checkoff throughout the process of vetting whether or not I'm selecting this guy as my franchise quarterback. And thus, do you then get into a situation And does that storm, like the one on Saturday night, go from being simply cloudy to now all of a sudden lightning and furious winds? That's winds with a D, not winds with a W-I-N-S. I think that's where they are right now. Do I think Ballard and Steichen get along? Sure. Do I give Ballard credit for giving the authority to Steichen for this? Yes. But that becomes a very, very potentially difficult situation if you go with Jones, because you are saying the one area that you were supposed to evaluate more than any other, I have now, through my own inventory, determined that evaluation fell short. And we've done everything we can to try, not once, not twice now, but like 3 different times, to give the wake-up call, and he hit the snooze button again. Mike Chappell joins us 19 minutes. We'll discuss that and more. Mike Chappell going to join us coming up top of the hour. We'll get back into the Colts conversation about the quarterback and the things that, Carly Ursay-Gordon had to say, that Shane Steichen had to say. The other big story is that locally of the Sophie Cunningham injury. And today an MRI on the right knee, find out the assessment and the time period in which Sophie Cunningham would be gone for the Fever. The reason that this is, I think, particularly pertinent is because of the fact that we talked, Eddie, a while ago with the Caitlin Clark injury, the groin injury of Caitlin Clark. We had the discussion when she first began missing games of kind of targeting this period of time where you look at if you look realistically at the time frame of schedule, we kind of circled yesterday, right? Hey, if they can get to that point, then they've got some time off. If Sophie Cunningham, and this is a big if, I realize, and there's a danger in getting too far into the weeds of, ifs and buts, I realize. If she is unavailable for an extended period of time, or more importantly, if we find out that Sophie Cunningham, like two of her teammates before, is now out for the year, does that then make less relevant the time frame of return of Caitlin Clark? And do you then contemplate giving Caitlin Clark the rest of the year, to not return and not jeopardize further injury? Or do you owe it to the rest of that roster to say, we've got to put out the best product possible?
I think you owe it to the rest of the roster, Jay. Look at what Kelsey Mitchell's done this season. She's been one of the best players in the WNBA, and she won't be up for consideration for MVP just because the team is not, at the top of the standings like they projected to be. And you owe it to Natasha Howard, who signed to come here to Indiana to compete for a championship. You owe it to all these players that have stepped up in the absence of Caitlin Clark to not fold 10 and just, mail in the rest of the season. They're still in positioning. They're 6th right now in the standings, I think. They're right there, just 2 games out of 4th. Like, there's still an avenue for them to have a home court advantage on a series. And Caitlin Clark's been out for over a month now. So you would have to assume that she's coming back relatively soon. And I don't think Caitlin Clark is going to go for sitting out for the rest of the season either.
I would agree with that last part. I mean, it's a...
And you resting Caitlin Clark for the rest of the year doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form, because most of this roster isn't back next year as of right now.
What if it helps you? I'm speaking in hypotheticals here, playing devil's advocate, but what if it helps you, Eddie, by not... If there is the chance that she is not 100%, or you run the risk of furthering an injury, then do you, and it's a really bad comparison, but I'm just saying it for the sake of, like, look at Tyrese Halliburton. And I get it. I mean, Halliburton, absolutely, that he had to be on the floor. I mean, I get it. But you knew, as did Tyrese Halliburton, as did Kevin Pritchard, as did Rick Carlisle. I mean, everyone knew when Halliburton went out there that there was the risk of that injury furthering by him being out there. Now, the stakes they were at, you got to do it. If they are able to determine, and I don't know that we would ever know this, but if medically speaking they're able to determine that a Caitlin Clark injury, that playing could complicate or advance her injury further, potentially, do you then say you're not going out there? Does this in any way, shape, or form impact or affect the level of tolerance you would have for future risk of injury?
I don't know. She seemed pretty much shut down for 3 weeks. It's like you would assume that the progression of this slowly integrating her back in is to prevent
they have how many games
a long-term injury. They have 9 games left.
I mean, that's a fair amount, right? It's not like there's 2 games left. I mean, that's a fair amount. But, that right there, that question is going to come up almost assuredly, though, is it not? Because today, well, yesterday, for that matter. I mean, I've had people ask me in the last, since this injury, gosh, what does that mean for the return of Caitlin Clark? And what is the level or the extent of the injury of Caitlin Clark? Because there finally was kind of a discussion on her coming back, right?
There has been, yeah, but we still don't know when.
Let me rephrase that. Not coming back like getting into game next week, but I'm saying of upping the workload and mixing her back in, right?
Yeah, last week she was running sprints up and down the court, and they were starting to work on her conditioning
and
before
she was
she's
not
back
with
on
the team this weekend for personal reasons.
So none of the players that were injured going into the game yesterday were with the team. So Ari McDonald wasn't there, Sydney Colson wasn't there, and Caitlin Clark was not there.
Okay, so I shouldn't say for personal reasons. There was an unfortunate, obviously a loss for her boyfriend's family. Grandfather or grandmother passed away, and so there was the maybe unfair assumption or connection that would be why she did not travel with the team.
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah. Yes, her boyfriend's grandmother unexpectedly passed. She had not been ill. She unexpectedly passed, and then Caitlin Clark was not with the team. Either way, understandable. Either way, right? And the fact that was the benchmark itself. Did you watch any yesterday, by the way, there was a primetime football game last night, was there not?
Yeah, Bears-Bills.
Yeah, did you watch any of it?
Did not.
How much preseason football do you watch?
I literally only watched the Colts starters, and then I shut it right off.
You didn't watch Ulysses Bentley.
I did not. Did not watch our polo player.
Do you think if we got Ulysses Bentley on the show, do you think he'd be offended if I did his voice? I was thinking it might offend him.
It's a good question.
I think it might. Because it would offend me if somebody's like, this is what I think of, like, Jake Query sounding like. I'd be like, but that's not who I am. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of, but the name sounds that way, right?
It does.
Yes, that's correct. He did not play terribly, I think, right?
He's impressed, and Jake,
I'm telling you.
There's, like, with the injuries now, Khalil Herbert has been dealing with an injury. Tyler Goodson left the game in a sling with a left elbow injury. Like, out of nutrition, is he going to make the roster?
Things are starting to look up for our boy. We thought he was going to be in the polo clubs come Saturday, but he may be stuck in Indianapolis. I just like doing the voice, to be honest with you. Doesn't it sound, I mean, where would you think Ulysses S. Bentley, if you didn't know differently, where would you guess he went to college? Cambridge, probably? Oxford? London School of Economics? That literally sounds like the East, like, oh, yes, he went to New Brunswick Prep Academy in Maine. I want to see him make the roster, and I want to thank people that actually sent me a notification when he was playing well and had hard runs. I had several people that texted and or tweeted me, in fact, saying, UB4, making it happen. Let's go. Love it. Mike Chappell going to join us next. Lot to unpack. You just looked at me like I'm crazy, Eddie.
I forgot to update. We had a switcheroo because there is a Colts Zoom at 1 o'clock, so Mr. Chappell's at 2 o'clock and Pat Boylan is at 1.
So here, do you have the breaking news sounder? We need a rewind sounder that just goes to say that we're rewinding what we just said. So take out what I just said. Breaking news, Pat Boylan joining us next. We will discuss the Sophie Cunningham situation and the Caitlin Clark situation as well. We'll do it on the other side. Okay, let's get you caught up on the headlines so far today. Xavier Howard is in for the Colts. Former Pro Bowl defensive back, most recently with the Miami Dolphins, 32 years old, has not played in over a season, but did have experience in Lou Anarumo's defense, and the Colts are in desperate need of experience at that position because attrition has certainly hurt the defensive back room. And so he is in the mix. What does that mean for the rest of the roster? That has yet to be determined. The quarterback situation, Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen is hoping to have a decision on that within the week. And I think there are implications and ripples from that depending on which way he goes. I know he is very high on Daniel Jones, and I'll be honest, he does not seem equally high on Anthony Richardson. And I don't mean that to say that there's like a personal thing. He just keeps going back to talking about how it's above and beyond the physical traits of a quarterback that make you determine who is going to be your starter. And the fact that he keeps going back to that, it makes you just feel like he's leaning one way. And then the fever yesterday, the injury to Sophie Cunningham that was before, I should say, a tremendous comeback. And the Connecticut Sun yesterday. Joining us now to talk about that, Pat Boylan is the television voice of the Indiana Fever, joins us on the always busy and once again available to be sponsored guest line. Pat, Sophie Cunningham is having an MRI today as I understand it. Do we know when we may have more clarity on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. The Fever will have, fortunately, a couple of practices. They haven't had many lately here coming up in the week. So my hope is maybe later of the week, Stephanie White will have an update. But as of now, I think we'll just have to wait and see the results of that MRI and what we hear in the coming days.
Okay. Let's get to this. In terms of, before we go into, the doom and gloom of yet another injury, and it has been a franchise that appears to be snake-bitten, but the good of yesterday, the bad news, you get down to a team in Connecticut that you've had a lot of success with and that has struggled this year, but the comeback that they had, that was facilitated or done in what way, aside from the heroics of Kelsey Mitchell, who was just spectacular?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just Kelsey Mitchell. That would not be, giving enough credit to numerous other players, Aaliyah Boston, Odyssey Sims, who both played well. But this was, in my opinion, largely Kelsey Mitchell having a heroic put the team on her back type moment. Now, it was certainly a team effort. They improved defensively significantly right around the midway point of the third quarter, which what I thought was interesting about the comeback was I thought if you were going to see signs of that comeback happening, you'd see it right after halftime. The Fever went into the half really on a down note, really struggling, and then came out in the third quarter. And actually, when the lead hit its largest was after halftime. It was in the third quarter. It was somewhere around the 7-minute mark of the third quarter. It got to 21 points. So there wasn't this immediate, energy boost right out of halftime. It was kind of midway through the quarter, which made the whole thing, in my opinion, even more impressive and even more improbable. A, they had less time to just accomplish it, but B, they took an initial punch from Connecticut after taking a few, and they still were able to regroup and put it all together. Connecticut is not a great offensive team, so I kept thinking as this broadcast was going on, if the Fever can lock in defensively, they've still got a chance here. They're going to need a big-time effort and big-time efforts from numerous players, but if they can lock in defensively, then they've really got a shot. And in the third quarter, until Layla Lacan threw in one of Connecticut's guards, threw in a very difficult three-pointer at the buzzer. But before that, the Fever had given up just 12 points in the third. So I think it was a combination of Kelsey Mitchell just going nuclear, but the defense really tightened up in a major way. And, as has been discussed here, that 21-point comeback was the largest in franchise history. And if you look at some of the other comebacks, the previous largest was 20 in 2019. But in that game, the Fever were down by 20 early mid-second quarter. They had a lot more time to do it. So to have the comeback that they did and really to have to start midway through the third was even more impressive.
Pat, if we got into this earlier, and I'm curious your thought on it. and this is, and I want to be clear here. I don't want to put you in a bad spot because I realize your position is the television voice, but we're just going to speak it. Two guys sitting around over beer nuts, okay? If Sophie Cunningham's injury now is one that causes her to miss extended time or the remainder of the season, do you believe that in any way, shape, or form would impact the timeline or the thought process of timeline on Caitlin Clark's return?
Yeah, I don't think so. And Stephanie White's been asked a version of that question, albeit not with Sophie Cunningham. But she's been asked, just about every iteration of that question that you can ask. If the team is playing better, for example, when they went on that 5-game winning streak, does that make you, she was asked, more willing to hold back longer on Caitlin Clark? Or if the team is struggling now, does that make you want to push, further or try to get her back sooner? And the answer has always been, we're going to do what's best for her, and we're going to do what's best for her is ultimately what's best for the team here. So, does it change the dynamic of the future of the season? Potentially, and I don't want to speculate. I don't know that that's the case, and we'll find out, here hopefully in the next few days, or at least get more of an indication on what's going on with Sophie Cunningham. It really is an incredibly frustrating injury, not just because of all the injuries the Fever have been dealt, but she had been playing so well. The second best three-point shooter since mid-July. She had gotten all the way up to fourth in three-point percentage in the WNBA going into that game yesterday. So she has been a real weapon for this team, and especially for a team that's not just missing Caitlin Clark, but it's without Ari McDonald and without Sydney Colson the rest of the year. As you know, and as has been discussed on this station, the Fever played a game without a point guard. I thought Odyssey Sims, by the way, was terrific yesterday, and a hat tip to, Kelly Krauskopf and Amber Cox for finding her and getting that done, because a player that wasn't even here a week and a half ago was really pivotal in that big comeback. She's a point guard, but what had happened is, as all of these other point guards had gone down, Sophie Cunningham had moved to a more on-the-ball role, and then you lose her to injury, and so you lose another ball handler. So, I think the Caitlin Clark potential return date still, it's in its own vacuum. I don't think there's anything that influences it here. It's about, her getting to the point where they feel fully comfortable, hopefully her getting some practice time and then going from there. Stephanie White said yesterday she still was hopeful that that's happening this year. But until she starts practicing, I don't think that return date, becomes any clearer. And we are here, into mid-August, and the season does end early September. So it'll be something to watch here in the coming days and weeks, I think. But just really a devastating loss, and hopefully not one that is long-term for Sophie Cunningham for numerous reasons, but the top one being just how well she was playing and how pivotal she's been to this team lately.
Pat Boylan, our guest. He is the television voice of the Indiana Fever. Fever yesterday winning in overtime over Connecticut. I wanted to expand on that, Pat. Tell me what Sophie Cunningham, give me the one or two things that she does that are going to be the hardest to replicate in her absence.
Well, I don't want to suggest that the team without her is missing fire and passion, because what better example have you seen of that than right after Sophie Cunningham went down, coincidentally. But, the comeback yesterday was right after her injury. In fact, about a quarter after her injury. But, she has this unique ability. It's a little like TJ McConnell. She has this unique ability, I think, to fire up teammates, to turn the tide of momentum, or when things are going well, to turn when momentum is in your direction, to really turn that knob to 9, 10, 11, if you will, on just the momentum side of things. She has the ability to do that like few Fever players that I've seen. And I think TJ McConnell, their styles are different, so it's not apples to apples there, but it reminds me of McConnell in the way that she's able to get the crowd fired up. She's able to get her teammates fired up, and she can just be that positive lightning rod when you have her. And so the Fever, I think their togetherness and their resiliency, look, I know those things can sound cliche and can be cliche, and a lot of coaches say them, but yesterday was a great example of just how true it is with this Fever team. And it's something that, Stephanie White comes on the show. You've known her for a long time. I've known her for a long time too. And she's not somebody that's going to just say things to say things. This team has a terrific togetherness, a terrific chemistry. I think all of the challenges they faced this season, especially some of those early in the season, have helped this team bond together. So to answer your question on Sophie, it's the fieriness and the passion, and then, of course, the three-point shooting that is tough to miss if you don't have her. But I do think it's something that this team does have in spades, does have a fair amount of, even if they don't have her. But they'll miss that for sure if she misses time here. And hopefully, if she does miss time, it's not an injury that keeps her out for the rest of the year. But again, we'll hopefully know more on that in a couple of days.
Hey, Pat, how many variations of teams have the Fever had this year? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. 6, 7, 8. I haven't really thought of it in that way of like putting it down on paper, but I have thought of it from this perspective. If you look at that opening day roster and what you were expecting and what you were anticipating this team to be, look, every team deals with injuries. Every team deals with significant things that they weren't expecting to happen at the beginning of the year. But it's felt like the Fever have had like 5 seasons worth of that in this season. And it feels like we're on iteration 7 or 8 of this. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and put it to paper, but it's especially significant if, I know we have a lot of Pacers fans and NBA fans who have taken a lot more interest in the W over the last couple of years. It's especially significant when you consider it's a 44-game season versus an 82-game season. I mean, the Pacers didn't really get going last year until somewhere around game 25, game 30. Well, in the WNBA, if you don't get going until game 30, that's 3/4 the way through the year. So it feels like every 5 games there's a different iteration of this team due to injuries or obviously the DeWanna Bonner situation at the beginning of the year was kind of the first major change to the roster. And I think they've done a really good job on the fly in all of this. I mean, if you were to consider that you don't have Caitlin Clark for more than half of the year and your other 2 point guards would have gone down and the DeWanna Bonner situation, which happened, and the Sophie Cunningham injury, by the way, this is her 3rd injury this year. If you would have looked at all of that and said 19 and 16 at this point, I think you would have been fairly surprised or fairly impressed to be at this point. The fact that they've dealt with what's just been constant turmoil through the course of the season for numerous reasons, and to still be sitting here 2 games away from having home court advantage in the first round, I think is pretty impressive. And the last 9 games here will go a long way in telling the story of this season. But it's amazing to me that despite all of this, despite the constant turmoil, that they're still in a spot, I think, to accomplish every goal that they had at the beginning of the season. And so these last 9 games in a really crowded WNBA standings will be really, really important.
Who's their most versatile player?
Good question. Off the top of my head.
Of the available, I should say. Of the available.
Off the top of my head, I don't know if this is exactly the direction that you maybe would think I would go, but the transformation that Aaliyah Boston has undergone this year without Caitlin Clark has been significant because the style of play that she plays when Caitlin Clark is out there, she's setting high ball screens, she's rolling to the rim, Clark is finding her down there in the post, and then when you don't have Caitlin Clark, I mean, her style is totally different. She's playing almost a little bit like when Domantas Sabonis was with the Pacers as an offensive hub right now. I mean, they're putting the ball in her hands at the high post. She's passing. She leads the league in assists for centers. She knocked down, a foul line jump shot to tie the game and ultimately send it into overtime. And you consider that she's having an all-star starting caliber season. And in all of this, she's had to play 2 distinctly different styles. I don't know whether that technically makes her the most versatile or not, but I think watching her shift between these 2 different versions, and by the way, I give the coaching staff, I think, a lot of credit for this too, because, finding the style that fits Aaliyah Boston best without Caitlin Clark on the fly is not an easy task either. But watching how she's playing now versus how she's playing with Clark is quite different. And for her to still have success in both of those roles, I mean, she had a stretch where she had 6 straight double-doubles and was Eastern Conference Player of the Week. And all of that happened without Caitlin Clark. And there's no question that she's a better player with Clark on the floor and that Clark is a better player with Boston on the floor. But for her to find success in as many different ways as she has had this season, considering the different personnel on the floor around her, she would probably be my pick for that.
Pat, by the way, you are a Ball State Cardinal, right? Chirp, chirp.
Correct.
You get fired up from action. I give Ball State football a ton of or MAC football a ton of credit because they own the Thursday night thing now, right? Do you how into Ball State football do you get?
I certainly follow them. I follow week to week. I wouldn't say I'm a diehard. I'm admittedly a little bit of a fair weather. When they were really good in the COVID year, I was watching. That
should be fair feather, right? Because
yeah, maybe I'm slightly fair feathered.
Okay, that's fair.
They've got Purdue right out of the gates here. New coach for both teams. I'll be interested to see what they look like. But yeah, I mean, the nice thing about quote unquote MACtion is if you want to follow all of the big top teams and the top storylines of college football, you can do that, and then you can also follow the MAC team because your MAC team's playing during the week, and you don't have to, go to channel 8,592 on a Saturday at 2 to find them, or on some obscure streaming site. They're usually on TV. They're on ESPN or ESPN2 during the week. So it makes it easy to follow Ball State and then also to keep up with some of the bigger college football programs and the big games of the day.
You raise an interesting point there in our flippancy, Pat. It really is fascinating to me. I just had this conversation with Eddie the other day. My cable system, where I live, the area in Indy that I live, there's only one cable company that you can use, right? And I had pretty basic cable because I'm not home a lot. And then all of a sudden they send me something. They're like, here, you got to use this now. And it's got 300 channels and every app, and it's all stream and all that. And I get it. I mean, that's the way of the world. I get it. But the advance in this and the bundling packages and the different app packages for literally every sport, and I think it's even bleeding into now the NFL to an extent. Sports properties, am I correct in saying, Patty, and you tell me if I'm off base, but while I understand they need to monetize when and where they can, they run the risk of confusing the average consumer into the point of then that consumer losing complete interest because out of sight, out of mind. Am I literally the oldest guy on the planet when I say that?
When all of the cable unbundling started happening, I think there were a lot of people that thought it was going to be for the better. And I think you look at it now, and if we could just go back to how things were, I don't think it would be all that. I think it would be a whole lot easier. Yeah, it's a fascinating landscape. Whether everything you said, I agree with. Whether that equals, the fan losing interest or, becoming disinterested, that I don't know. But it is. It can be confusing, especially when conferences or whomever have so many different rights holders and, the Big Ten Network and then Peacock and you're going here and you're going there.
Right.
ESPN. It's a challenge. If you want to be a casual fan, that to me is where it's really challenging is, okay, I do want to follow Ball State football. I can name the quarterback and I can name the coach. And to be honest, after that, there's probably a few players that if you said, oh yeah, I know him. But that's casual fandom, and it's not always the easiest to do that if you have to have 6 different subscriptions and jump to 8 different networks over the course of 12 games, which fortunately you don't really have to do with quote unquote MACtion.
Okay, so in conclusion, and I mean this sincerely, I mean respectfully. When you are doing fever games, when you, Pat Boylan, are doing them, those games are available in how many different places, or are you doing them only for some of the games depending on where it's airing?
Right. So when it's national TV, and by that I mean the W, if it's on ESPN or CBS, we're not doing them.
Correct.
So those are national crews. And then on Friday nights, those are Ion games. So if they're home, we're doing them for Ion. If they're road, we're not doing them. And then our local package is on WTHR, as you know, and then also FanDuel has a few. So, yeah, I mean, just saying that is more than a few networks. And, for the WNBA, which is a growing league, I've always seen that as a positive, because if the alternative was something more condensed, it might mean less outreach. To me, the fact that ESPN and that ABC or CBS and also ABC with ESPN and that ION, all want to show these games and to increase the reach of the WNBA, I think is a good thing. That doesn't mean it doesn't come with challenges. And, obviously I would love to I think we do 28 of the 44. Selfishly, I would love to do more, but I love that the franchise gets the spotlight that it does on ESPN or ABC or on CBS. But yeah, I mean, no question. There are 6 or 7 different channels to follow the Fever on, and I think we try to do our best in educating the fans and having color-coded schedules and the social and digital posts. But it's certainly not turning on just one channel, and there's the Fever every single night. That said, our partners at WTHR, I think, have helped simplify that in a major way.
Well,
for so many games.
Are the WTHR broadcasts exclusive or simulcasts?
Those are exclusive.
Okay, yeah. I mean, listen. You send it out with each game, and I think I've even a couple of times. Like my dad loves watching the games, for example, and that's like one of my duties, right? Is to make sure that we know when and where he's watching it and whatever else. But so I appreciate that clarification. Little bit of time to catch your breath. Obviously, a couple of days off. We will see what does come of the news with Sophie Cunningham, and then how that impacts Caitlin Clark and et cetera moving forward. But appreciate the time today, Pat.
Thank you for not making me follow Eddie White. I appreciate getting to be ahead of Eddie White.
Trust me. I don't know that I follow him on social media either. If that makes you feel any better, right?
I just didn't want to follow, because the entertainment factor, but B, he might have run you past the 1:30 window. So I won't do that to Eddie.
Eddie White told me that when you guys had your Pacers dinner, that Eddie White pays for himself, and then the rest of you make Mark Boyle pay for you. Is that right?
I don't think that's right.
I think that's what he said. Yeah.
I think you might have a little revisionist history there. You might have to pin him down on that one.
Well, it's sometimes the sun in can creep from the hair follicles, and you know what I mean, and start clouding judgment. So yeah, I get it. All right, appreciate it, Pat.
Thanks, Jake.
All right, Pat Boylan joining us on the program. Eddie, you want to share on that?
Share on what?
Is it true that Eddie White pays for his dinner when you guys go to your Pacers radio dinner, and then Boyle pays for everybody else, but Eddie pays for himself?
I'll let Eddie answer that question. And then if he's wrong, then I'll correct him.
So Eddie White went to the LIV Golf, is that right?
He went there on the opening day, and then he was there yesterday, yeah.
I'm fascinated by it because I personally thought that kind of the controversies of LIV had gone away. And then when we discussed it, it was apparent to me that they have not. But we will ask Eddie White about that and more, and we'll do it on the other side. Well played on the subtlety here, Eddie, on the music. LIV Golf was, from an in-person attendance aspect, a success in Westfield. And I admit, again, as I let off the show with my total ignorance on this, but let me, before we bring in Eddie White, repeat what I said earlier, and then I want Eddie White, who is a much more passionate golf fan and follower than myself, to expand upon this. I certainly understand that LIV Golf, when it came about, was, and when it first was announced, was very controversial and polarizing because of the sensitivity of the Saudi government involvement, the politics thereof, and the fact that they, as seen by some people, poached away PGA golfers with incredible amounts of salary for it and trying to kind of shake up the way tournaments are done. And even with the discussion that it was going to merge again with PGA, which I think clearly now we can see that that's not going to happen, but we'll get into that as well. It seemed to me, in watching and seeing the reaction from those that attended in Westfield, that one of the things that is very invigorating to fans of LIV is that it's like the Waste Management Open is the one golf tournament where people can kick back and be loud and play music and be young. And every sport now is trying to get that 35 and under audience. And LIV Golf seems to get away from the traditional etiquette and rules and overall nature of the PGA and is more like a party-like atmosphere, and people are intrigued by that. And it goes without saying there are great golfers in it. That I understand. But it does not seem that there are many people that are just kind of casual about this. They're either all in or they're all out. Eddie White was there for, I believe, 2 of the days out in Westfield and joins us now on the program. Eddie, is any of what I just said within the realm of accurate?
It's all accurate. And first of all, I'm going to answer your question. But first, I don't get a chance to talk to you publicly a lot, which I do enjoy our private conversations. But I thought of you the other day. I'm going to answer your question. Hold on a second. I was at the State Fair, and I don't know if anything in the world, never disappoints like the State Fair. You have a crappy Super Bowl when you're at the State Fair. It's fantastic. And I thought of you because, and I want to say this publicly, there are few people who are absolute 100% real, no phony about them in their advocacy and their flat-out ambassador role for why we live here and why we love living here. I wasn't born here. I didn't grow up here. But, man, I love this place. It's just neat. And you're always out there doing stuff, promoting that, and I want to thank you for that. And you're 100% right, and I support you, and I just wanted to tell you that. I want people to know that there's a real good person there. And
now wait a minute. So
now back to
now hold on, Eddie.
No,
and I appreciate that. But I'm curious because there's a guy on social media that attacks me all the time named Ed Holleran that says that I hate the Colts and everything about it and that I'm a fake hometown hero.
Wait a minute. You can have opinions, and somebody can like the Colts, not like the Colts, like the Pacers, like this trade, don't like the trade. That's life. I mean, I know in the grand scheme, the big picture of our country and of our world, it's become very me against you, and it's hateful and whatever. I mean, I'm from a generation where you could have a Democratic presidential sign in your yard, and the guy next to you could have the Republican candidate, and guess what? They shovel each other's sidewalks. They help each other out. There was no hatred. We can't have that. And you can have a different opinion and still have great respect for somebody. I mean, you and I probably agree on maybe 50% of the stuff. It doesn't mean I don't like you. We can respect each other's opinion. So that guy's nuts. But you can love Indiana and you can love the place, but I mean, there's things that drive you crazy. You love Shannon. I love my wife. At times they drive us nuts, and we think they're 100% wrong. We're not going to tell them that because we want to stay with them.
Right.
But, that's the way they're growing. All right, now back to your LIV thing. I went Friday to see some people that I knew there, and yes, I went to see it. And I'm from a generation, and a lot of people my age and older don't like it. They call it gimmick golf, and they don't like the whole Saudi thing. Which let's address that elephant in the room right out of the gate. Listen, did we not go to China for the Olympics? I think China does some bad things to certain people over there. Did we not go to Russia? Let me ask those people, are you advocating that the city and the state says no to that unbelievable event that's going to come to Lucas Oil Stadium under the tagline, the WWE? The WWE has gone to Saudi Arabia for the last 10 years. So you're now advocating that the state of Indiana says you can't come here because you're working with the Saudis. No. Every country's done bad things. Hello, even the red, white, and blue. Okay? So now, let's get back to the LIV thing. Yes, it is unique. They're going for the younger people. Jake, you know me. I've been to over 20 Masters. I've been to the PGA. At Crooked Stick, we've had a couple BMWs. We've had the Solheim Cup. I've been to the Memorial. I've been to other golf events. I've never seen so many kids under the age of 20 at a golf event having a blast. Their shirts are out. There's noise. There's music. There's activity. And what really helped Chatham, and I give Chatham a tremendous amount of credit, because that course was not built to host an event. It was built to sell homes and have a golf course for the people who live on the homes to play. It wasn't built for a pro event. They did a marvelous job. What really helped that event is what's something that LIV created and is genius. It's shotgun starts. There's action on every hole right from the get-go. What's that voice that you do for the guy you do your Thurston Howell the third voice?
Oh, Ulysses Bentley the fourth, yeah.
Yeah, can you do that for me, please?
Yeah, that's correct, yes. You know, I used to enjoy golf until the LIV. It's a little bit too raucous for me.
Okay, Mr. Ulysses, do you have a chalet on number 12, sir?
Well,
right. If you did
it depends
have
on whether I make the roster.
Okay, well, it's true because you got to afford it. If you have a chalet on a 12th hole of a regular event, you can have no action for 3 hours, and you're just sitting there drinking, eating, waiting. What LIV did is the action is going on right from the get-go. It's 4.5 hours and then a concert, and it was, if I pick one word to describe it, it was fun. Now, is it everybody's cup of tea? No. Is it gimmick golf? No. I do kind of like the team concept. The shot making, how many chip-ins did we see? How many long putts did we see? How many tremendous drives with carries did we see? Those guys can play. And yes, they're a little long in the tooth. Some of them aren't. John Rahm can play. Right now he can dominate on the PGA Tour. They're really good golfers. It's just different. And if we learned anything as the years, and in you and our cases, the decades have gone by, what you and I grew up with, the sports that we grew up on, like anything else, has totally changed, and this is just part. Look at baseball. Putting a guy on second base to start the 10th inning, that's something that maybe somebody would do in our Little League days, not in professional baseball, but they do it. It's just different. In this case, it was successful for Westfield. The tagline, Indianapolis, was seen all over the world. I loved incorporating the 500. Having the winner out there, and he's smoozing and tying it, having Rahm take the bottle of milk and pour it over his head. Who doesn't like that? That is all good for Indiana.
Well, that's okay. One of the things I found interesting, Eddie, and this is me overthinking things, okay? But
right.
I'm curious of this. For Chatham Hills and for the city of Westfield, it was very clear to me that Westfield in general, the city of the town, city, whichever way you want to refer to it, but that Westfield was very excited about, understandably, the imagery, the promotion of their community with this coupled with the Colts being there for training camp, like the one leaving while the other's coming into town with LIV, right? And then I see it in the entire, and I get from a marketing standpoint why from LIV's standpoint, yes, Westfield is Indianapolis Metro. I mean, it's Indianapolis. Nobody knows what Westfield, Indiana is outside of central Indiana. I get that. But I'm curious, was there letdown or disappointment for the infrastructure of the community of Westfield of having it being internationally labeled as Indianapolis?
That's a good question that maybe their mayor could answer, but I think the financial benefit, and I mean all the hotels, the restaurants, where you got to get gas, and all the people who got work as either parking lot vendors or people who rented their homes to players or to corporations who had parties in the homes. A lot of people in Westfield, again, whatever you want to call it, a town, a city, or whatever, they made a lot of money. and it was successful. Now Westfield can go out and use that to get other businesses to maybe come to Westfield. I mean, Grant Park is incredible. You know, the Colts had just moved out, but there was a national championship softball tournament going on at the same time over at Grant Park. So if you're Westfield and you're competing with Carmel, you're competing with Noblesville. Look what the mayor of Noblesville has done, bringing the boom up there and building that building. I mean, there's so much going on north of the city. They're crazy not to use the Indianapolis tag, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a benefit to their city, their borough, their town, whatever you want to call it. And maybe you'd love to have seen Westfield on the headline for all the logos instead of Indianapolis. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you do that net, it was a win, regardless of any way you want to look at it.
Where do things stand, Eddie? Eddie White is our guest. Of course, you know him on the post-game shows for the Indiana Pacers, and then being the only one that picks up his dinner when he goes to eat with Mark Boyle. Eddie, when LIV and golf in the PGA, when LIV was first announced, you know, it was this great division. And then all of a sudden there was this hooray kumbaya that they were actually going to join forces again and rejoin. But where do things stand with that? That seems to have kind of gone on the back burner.
It really has. That's a great way of putting it, because about a year and a half ago, it was on the front burner. And you had the guys involved, including Tiger Woods, in those meetings. And then it has gone dormant for probably a year and a half. And I think maybe they both have realized, you know what, we're just going to try to coexist and see what's going on. That the thing to watch now that the PGA Tour is going to end its season this weekend down in Eastlake in Atlanta is will there be, and I'll use your word from earlier, poaching? Will, you know, LIV supposedly gave the nod that they were done after they got Rahm, who, remember, for years said, I'm not going to that tour. Well, he went. But now that they haven't come to an agreement, does LIV say, okay, it looks like we're still at war. Let's go get some people. We're not going to get Scotty Scheffler, but, you know, Rahm said no for a couple of years. You know, is Rory, now he's getting older and he's won his Masters. He's ready to say, hey, I'll take the money and I'll come. But you hope that, and I don't know. I mean, as much as I love golf, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how you could do it. I mean, you can't put a LIV tournament within a PGA event, and, you know, maybe you do off weekends and have guys that maybe can play both. And so you can play on the LIV and have a team concept, and then next week we have a regular tour event in Charlotte. Maybe that's possible. The money's there. The money is certainly there. But to your question, and it was you talk like you don't know much about golf. You know more than you're letting on. You're right. It has been dormant for at least a year and a half.
Okay. Then my last question is this: the team. I know that LIV this weekend crowned like a season champion. And then they have the individual champions, I guess. Is that hokey, or is this, like other things that we see, something that the PGA even is going to have to pay attention to, because that coveted younger audience in a quicker, shorter lifespan lifestyle is appealed by that. And therefore, even though it seems gimmicky and hokey, it's something not unlike the red, white, and blue ball of the ABA and the three-point shot that the big league is going to have to pay attention to.
Let me ask you this. Who's the best golfer on the PGA Tour right now this year by far?
Scotty Scheffler would be my guess. I don't pay attention to it on a week-to-week basis.
You are 100% correct. He is the best golfer by far. I believe he's won 5 events this year. It's 2 years in a row, I believe, or something like that. He's won 5. Last guy to do that was Tiger. So he's probably the best guy. Well, Tommy Fleetwood, who has never won on the PGA Tour, could win this week in Atlanta at Eastlake, and he would be crowned the FedEx Cup champion golfer of the year and get a lot of money for that, winning one time this weekend. So it's not too different than what LIV just did, where Jon Rahm, who did not win a tournament all year, he was competitive, had a couple runner-ups, but they have this complicated system, and, you know, he was behind going into Sunday's match behind a guy who would have won it. He played well enough, didn't win the event, got it to the extra hole, but at least was so competitive, he won the golfer of the year. Now, this weekend, LIV continues to Michigan, where they're going to have a team championship. And they're basically having a play-in match on Wednesday where 18 will be eliminated and not compete over the weekend. So they have their individual champion, and now they have their team. Of course, PGA doesn't have a team, but it's not. It's similar but different, but not so different that you'd say, oh, what they're doing is gimmicky golf. It's just different. And you and I started this conversation 15 minutes ago talking about it's just different. And it may not be your cup of tea. You may be this old fart that is Byron Nelson wouldn't have wore his shirt out. No, he would not. It was different back then. But you know what? It is what it is. And you ask all those people, 3 days in a row, sold out in Westfield, and I haven't heard one person. I've talked to a bunch who've been there. Some went just for the concert, but enjoyed the golf. I've talked to young people and old people that more people are now into LIV because they were here and they had a great experience than they were last Tuesday afternoon.
So LIV ain't going to die. That's what we're getting at, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's here, and it may change its format. And what's going to be interesting is, Phil Mickelson's getting old at a point now where he really wasn't competitive this weekend, but, man, he made some long putts, and he's still the people's champion. But they're going to have to fill some spots, and you're going to have to maybe go and get some guys off the PGA Tour. And at least LIV is – I don't think they're making money, but they're making more today than they did ever. And, look at this weekend in Indianapolis was the highest attended event they had in the United States. Not more than Dallas, more than Chicago. Westfield, Indianapolis, more people showed up. It shows us it is a golf market. And, again, I got to clarify that. We don't have an annual tour event, which is very challenging to communities because you got to support it year in and year out. But when we bring in a BMW or a PGA Championship or a Solheim Cup, or in a couple of years, Crooked Stick will host the U.S. Senior Open, and Tiger Woods will be over 50 at that time. Hopefully, he wants to compete. He plays. It's going to be an event. It's going to be an event. And interesting to see, will Mickelson be able to mend enough fences to be able to come back and play in that U.S. Senior Open at Crooked Stick?
Difference between LIV and the hair of Eddie White? There's no dye in LIV. That much we know.
But Pete Dye did design both the courses at Chatham and Crooked Stick.
Yeah, nice tie in there.
He did not pay for my dinner with Boyle. I let Boyle pay for the whole thing, and he gloriously does it and loves doing it. Yeah.
I believe you sent me a text that said differently, but I'll check. Eddie, appreciate it as always.
Fake news. Hey, tell Shannon we said hi. I love you, brother.
All right, will do. Eddie White joining us on the program. Mike Chappell, by the way, latest on the Colts quarterback deal coming up in 12 minutes. We're going to give away spots in the Fantasy Football League at 2:30. Eddie, is that right?
Sounds
Roughly?
good to me, Jake.
By the way, here's a question for the masses.
Okay. Am I the masses in this scenario?
I don't know your level. I know nothing about what I'm about to ask, okay?
Well, I know my head can cover a lot of masses, so.
Okay, well, speaking of this, head gasket is what this includes.
Oh.
So I'm not going to say the names. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. But here's a question for the audience, okay? My car does not have, at least in my opinion, it does not have the number of miles that should have needed a total head gasket replacement. And I realized when I did that in March, that was a risk. But because the mileage was not high on the engine, I thought, you know what, I'll do this and see where things fall. So in March, the dealer did a complete head gasket repair for me. And I started getting, the check engine light, and then, things were going awry. So I took it in, and they just called me during the break to tell me that there is no compression in cylinder 6 because the clamps in the reservoir hose were not properly reattached. Now, I have no idea what any of this means. They have to take the coolant cover off to further determine the problem for the compression for cylinder 6. If 4.5 months ago I had the head gasket repaired and replaced, does that sound like that would be the issue that I'm having is related to that or totally separate from that? I know nothing about cars, so I don't know.
I know nothing about cars either, Jake, but it said something about not being hooked up properly, so I would assume that is something that it was not your problem.
Yeah, I don't. But how do you prove
your fault?
That? How do you prove it, right? Because I took it to my mechanic is the one looking at it, not the dealer. The dealer said that the head gasket should be covered under a 1-year warranty. But does that problem, do you think, fall under that category? It almost sounds like I need to take it back to the dealer, but I never trust the dealer when it – I'm not saying this specific dealer. Just in general, I'm using the dealer in air quotes. I'm always worried about that when it comes to repair.
You know what you can do, Jake? I mean, you make buku bucks on that IndyCar Radio Network thing.
That's right.
You do. So, I mean, you've probably got enough money saved up to buy yourself a car, get Boo a Catmobile.
A Catmobile. A little sidecar to go with it, you think?
Yeah.
Hey, Jake, if they didn't fasten the clamps properly, sounds like they owe you a new engine. How do you prove it, though? That's my question.
Did your mechanic take pictures?
Good question. A faulty or improperly installed head gasket will absolutely cause a loss of compression in a cylinder. I know nothing about this stuff.
Well, you work in IndyCar, Jake. I mean, you've probably got a bunch of mechanic friends you could have texted about this as well.
That's a good point. But those guys working on those cars, those are a whole different animal, right?
Well, I understand, but they should still have some sort of level of intellect and knowledge about just a standard car.
Any of intellect and knowledge of it supersedes mine, I can promise you that. The Colts are they about to do a reboot as well?
Are they Control-Alt-deleting and restarting?
That is, they're grabbing the they're blowing in the cartridge and putting it back in the Nintendo machine.
Oh, I'm glad.
At the quarterback situation. Mike Chappell joins us. We'll discuss next. Okay, big discussion. Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones. Mike Chappell joins us now, as he is kind enough to do each and every week from WXIN, Fox 59, and CBS 4. Mike, let's begin with this. I have several things I want to unpack, including some audio from Carly Ursay-Gordon from the Colts and Packers game on the television broadcast, where she joined Greg Rakestraw and as well Rick Venturi. As a matter of fact, Chap, if you're cool with it, here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to play first off one of the things that she had to say, and I want kind of your reaction to it. Are you cool with that, Chap?
Yeah, because I just got off the phone with Carly, and her and I were discussing this quarterback situation. But go ahead.
Okay, well, let's get to that. Let's start with that.
No, I'm blowing smoke.
Okay, I was going to say. I mean, that's believable, knowing your connection. You know what I mean? That's believable.
I know what you mean.
Okay,
Yeah.
so but let's begin with this. When she was asked, there were a couple of things, and I want you to tell me if anything jumps out at you, Mike, when she was asked about the quarterback situation. Here is Carly Ursay-Gordon.
It's the very expensive question, I think, that everyone's wondering about. And I think the best thing, this is one of the best camps we've had in quite a long time. And I think one of the things that we talked about in June was there's nothing that makes the good things rise to the surface better than competition. And I think having Daniel in here with Anthony, he's obviously had more experience than Anthony, but I think that room as a whole, they're competing in camp, but they are, they've each done things well. They've also made mistakes. So again, it's Shane is going to have a tough decision to make, but I feel confident he's going to make the right decision.
Chap, your initial reaction in hearing that?
Well, I mean, she's very good. She learned from her father a lot as far as being vague, but it's an expensive question that's got to be answered. It just does. I think that's kind of where it falls on. And the competition part, I just wonder. I mean, it's been competitive, and it's kind of been a crazy training camp, because when one has played well, the others played well, and when one hasn't, the others struggled. So I don't know. And have we seen growth from Anthony Richardson? Yes. And I really think Daniel Jones has sort of been as advertised, and whether that's a compliment or not, I don't know. So but this is where we are. It's like reading tea leaves and trying to parcel over words. We did the same thing with Shane Steichen after the game. So I don't know that she tipped her hand. I thought she tipped her hand a little bit more. She had an interview with Colts.com. I think it was before camp or when camp, whatever it was. And she kind of parroted or I guess Chris Ballard parroted what she said about how they're not ready to give up on Anthony Richardson. He's got this great potential, and they wanted to be here. So I just want Coach to make a decision so that the fan base can either applaud it or tear it apart, and we can move on until whoever that guy is falters, and then everybody will be yelling for the next guy to come in.
Well, but okay, Chap, here's what I find interesting. You mentioned that about, Shane Steichen and having to make this decision. I want to play for you. This is Shane Steichen on the evaluation of quarterback and the factors of picking one of these two guys.
It's everything, right? The operation, the communication in the huddle, the checks, getting guys on the same page, the consistency of all that obviously is going to play a big factor in this.
Okay, he keeps going back to that. And the reason I mention it, Chap, is because it is my opinion now that the reason Daniel Jones is still continued in this conversation is because any tie would go to Anthony Richardson. They have more invested in him symbolically. He's younger. He seemingly has more upside. He's had fewer starts. He has more intrigue. But because Shane Steichen keeps going back to and telling us repeatedly that it's more than just mechanics, yardage, and production, that leads me to believe that he feels better about the leadership and the intangibles of Daniel Jones than he does Anthony Richardson. Tell me why I'm wrong.
That's what I came away from. I thought that quote, and there was another one To me, I'm thinking that's Daniel Jones. It just is. And I think it'll be a very interesting discussion, although I think they've already had it, maybe yesterday, today, whatever, between Steichen and Chris Ballard and Carly. I think they've had that discussion, and that's what you have to decide: is do you want what is the more knowable what we're going to get with Daniel Jones? Because I think he's shown us in his years with the Giants. This is kind of who he is. Better completion, not great, but better completion percentage. Certainly no chunk play, not as enough chunk plays, but and maybe a better grasp of things around him. I don't know. As opposed to with Richardson, is my God, the sky's the limit, and so the floor is so low with him. So yeah, I thought in my again, and I'm still in the camp that I think they need to start Richardson because it's an expensive decision, and they have got to know.
When you say expensive decision, do you mean because you'd be paying $13 million for Daniel Jones to hold a clipboard, or do you mean symbolically speaking?
No. I'm talking going forward. You're paying Jones $13 million whether he holds a clipboard or whatever, or starts 17 games. My mind is, I understand where Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard too is, who gives us the best chance to win now? They have to win now. I thought Carter did a really good job of not answering. I think it was Rick Venturi about what needs to be done this year and all that. Maybe it was Rakes that asked it, and she really didn't answer it, which I don't know how. I didn't expect her to, but I'm looking more past this year. And at the end of the season, you've got to know what you got with Richardson. Is he your guy, or are you looking elsewhere? Yes, there's the fifth-year option you need to exercise, I think, in May. But if it's not Richardson, then who is it? Are you going to give Daniel Jones $45 million next year? Or are you starting this quarterback search all over again with probably a crappy draft pick, 14, 15, 16? Because this is not going to be a 4-win team. I don't see that. So my whole thing is they've got to figure out if Richardson's a guy. In my mind, the only way to do it, start him, and if he gets hurt or he doesn't play well, you bench him. Now the injury would he bench himself, and then okay, we can't trust this guy, and at the end of the season we'll figure out whether we're going to trade him, cut him, whatever. But I just think you can't be. Well, we just don't have enough information at the end of the season. And like maybe you have enough information already. Maybe some segments of the team says this guy can't. We can't go forward with this guy. I can't imagine that because he shows you just enough to sort of tease you. Richardson does. So I say it needs to be Richardson. I think looking at this schedule, the first half of the season, which I think is so conducive to getting off to a good start. But gosh, they need competent play at quarterback, and whether or not Daniel Jones's level bar sort of is more conducive to that, or Richardson's, 3 good plays and 1 bad play, which I can live with. 3 good plays and 3 bad plays isn't doable. That's where I'm at. I didn't think Carly really tipped her hand. I keep wondering if Steichen did. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But that's where we are.
It almost feels like, Chap. It almost feels like, honestly, like Steichen is wanting us to take the hint.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how Stephen Holder and I were talking about that, and he sort of won me over, and we talked about it, and I just think that's, to me, that rings of Daniel Jones, and maybe I'm again way off base, but I do think, I know there's going to be 3 voices in the discussion with Carly and head coach and GM, but boy, the head coach has got to make it. It's got to be his call. If it's 2-1.
Go ahead, Chap. I'm sorry.
If it's 2-1 and the 1 is Shane Steichen, who wants this guy, I think you have to let the head coach make the call because he's with the guy every day. He's calling plays for him every day. I hopefully they make the decision. I wish they'd make it today and we get the coach on Zoom and it's over with. I think he'll make it tomorrow. But this needs to end so that we know where this team is going forward, at least right now.
I want to play for you one other clip from Carly Ursay-Gordon because I found something very interesting in this, and I want to know, Mike Chappell of CBS4 and WXIN, if you caught on to the same thing here that almost might have been a Freudian, like PTSD comment. This is Carly Ursay-Gordon from Saturday's television broadcast with Greg Gregstraw and Rick Venturi talking about the working relationship between Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard.
We are so grateful to have Chris and Shane because I think Rick can probably speak to this. If you're a head coach and you don't get along with your general manager and you don't trust them, it's a total nightmare. So I think the great thing about Chris and Shane is they don't always agree, but they discuss it, and I think they make better decisions because they each have a unique kind of approach that I think makes us better as a whole.
Okay, Chap, let me tell you what I took from that. First off, were there any words there that jumped out to you in bold or italic print?
No, but then there was one other little thing at the end of that where she said, I think one of them asked us, well, how will you figure into it? And she said, well, I'll ask the question is like, really, is that what you want to do? But no, will Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard agree on this decision? I think there'll be some disagreement maybe on how they arrive at it, but then they'll be on board. That's the only way it works.
Okay.
You just can't disagree and then not be on board going forward.
To me,
whether or not it's
that jumped out to me, Chap, as somebody who was well aware of, witnessed, and still goes back to the non-working relationship in the end between Chuck Pagano and Ryan Grigson.
Yes. And again, I don't think Jim Irsay and Bill Polian were always hugging and high-fiving in meetings all the time. I bet Bill Polian drove Jim Irsay just crazy sometimes. I really do, which is fine. You can't have a guy that just sits there and nods, and whether it's your scouts or whatever, you've got to have people who push back, and that's how you move forward.
But Chap, here's what I find fascinating, and this is me overthinking it. You and I had a discussion the other day, I think, about the fact that I confessed to you that maybe I overthink things too much, right?
Right.
But in this situation, to me, maybe not even overtly, maybe subconsciously, that was the new owner of the Indianapolis Colts, and by new owner I mean, newly the highest position, okay? That was her saying, guys, I've seen it before. Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, I've seen it before. I know what happens when a GM and a head coach don't see eye to eye. And you're not expecting to see eye and eye on everything. But if Shane Steichen goes with a decision, because in my opinion, Chap, if Shane Steichen goes with Daniel Jones, then that is taking the most important decision from a personnel standpoint that Chris Ballard has had to make as the general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. And it is immediately putting into question Chris Ballard's ability to decipher whether or not a player has the totality to be trusted with the franchise. And so if Shane Steichen is going to make a decision that somewhat usurps the authoritative judgment of Chris Ballard, that is her preemptively saying to those two guys, that's allowed, but you better not let it put a wedge between the two of you. That was a preemptive statement by her.
That's what I say. I mean, you disagree and you disagree, but then when the decision's made, then you move forward as a unit. But let's keep in mind one thing where you say it usurps the biggest decision that Ballard's made, and it's true with Richardson. But Shane Steichen was on board with this decision. He had to be on board with this decision to draft him also. I mean, we all said from the start that Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen were now tied to Anthony Richardson,
right?
His success or his failure. So in that regard, this is also in some level Shane Steichen say, well, I messed that one up in 2023, which I think smart NFL guys have to do. You have to admit you made a mistake, and you stick with it for a year, you stick with it for 2 years, and then at some point you have to say this is not going to work. And I'm not saying they're there with Richardson at all, but at some point it's the good money after bad, whatever the phrase is. You have to say it's not going to work, and we have to move on because we've got a good roster, and our
They
players
do have a
are
decent
getting-
roster, right? I mean, they do have a decent roster.
I think this is this to me, in my mind, is a playoff roster, a playoff level roster. If they get a level above competent play at quarterback, give me what Gardner Minshew gave them in whatever it was 2023 was a little more than that, So, but then you're wild card or you're squeezing in AFC. It's still not a championship roster at all, but you're a heck of a lot closer. But when you don't give up and when you don't say you made a mistake and you keep pushing this another year, then Jonathan, we've had to discuss it. Jonathan Taylor's a year older. DeForest Buckner, all these guys, Quentin Nelson, all pro guys, and you're just letting their prime years go by. So that's the problem when you don't know, or when you don't know when enough's enough. That's why I say I start Richardson, and it works or it doesn't. And I know a good portion of the fan base already says it's not going to work, and they can make a heck of a lot stronger argument than I can, because he's 8-7 as a starter. He's missed 17 games with injury, and 2 of those wins that he's got in his career, he didn't finish the game. Gardner Minshew finished wins against Houston and Tennessee. So the deck is stacked against Richardson, but that's why I say you've got to find out, and the only way to find out is play him, and then it works or it doesn't, and then you've got some finality to it, as opposed to starting Jones and he plays okay, and then he has, he is who he showed in the Giants too many times, and then you replace him for Richardson, and then it's really muddied up, and then so I start Richardson and see what you got, but I'm not going to be shocked if they go with Jones, just because I'm reading into what Shane Steichen said the other day.
Chap, tell me a player on Saturday that, and I don't mean like, Michael Pittman, a player that needed to do so from a roster standpoint that most helped himself.
Well, from a roster standpoint, I was going to say Anthony Gould. He showed you some pretty good plays as a receiver. The one play from Richardson was just, I don't know whether the throw was better or the catch was better. Boy, I don't know that anybody Jalen Travis, the rookie tackle, he's going to make this roster, but all of a sudden he's your swing tackle with Blake Freeland going down with what appears to be a season-ending leg injury. Boy, Chris Lamont's a corner, I guess, and then I'm reaching. Had a decent game. Signing Xavier Howard tells me that they have real concerns about injuries at corner.
Right.
Not so much Kenny Moore, I don't think, but Jalen Jones and Juju Brents. They could have signed Xavier Howard a month ago in June.
Chap, do you think?
And they didn't.
Eddie and I have used this term on the show in the last month or so. If you think about the NCAA tournament, when you get situations like this where you got a guy that you go out and you sign because of attrition at a position, does that become a bid stealer? Is that bad news for a Jelani Woods that's hoping to make the roster, but now all of a sudden you got a roster spot that's taken elsewhere? Unless they put Brents or Jones and open them up on some sort of an IR, right?
Yeah, because I think injuries are going to factor into the 53. You can trust me. You can find roster spots. You can. But they could go into the season with 2 or 3 guys who may miss a game or two. Who was it last year? Josh Downs missed the first game or two, but you carry him because it's not going to be a long-term thing. So I don't know that this would impact the Jelani Woods, because I think you carry 4 tight ends, and and you make your decision on that third or fourth guy, it would more impact maybe an extra linebacker or again, a corner. But no, injuries will impact how they build this roster, because there's going to be 2 or 3 guys probably who won't be ready for the season, but won't be long term. You could carry, and I say you can carry. Let's say they think that Jalen Jones is going to miss 4 games, so you can put him on IR. But you got to wait until you got to wait until he's on the 53 to do that. So again, when it comes to cutting to 53, you're going to have a tough decision. I don't think with a Jelani Woods, and again, Tyler Goodson went out with that elbow. I thought he was going to be one of the top 3 running backs. Maybe he still will be. Maybe that wasn't a serious injury, but these injuries pile up, and when they're not season-ending or whatever, it impacts what you do at other positions.
Ulysses Bentley IV is their insurance policy there, chap. You know this, right? Yes, Ulysses is ready for the phone call. If they can get him off the polo fields, Ulysses Bentley IV has played well, right? That's my guy. I'm the president of the UB. What's that?
Probably a practice squad guy. Khalil Herbert, they brought in, the veteran guy, has been hurt. So, and DJ Giddens is pretty good. We'll see. Sometimes you see things in camp and in preseason games that really, we how many guys have we seen? What was the receiver? Deron Carter?
Drew Haddad, baby.
I tell you, and who was they had and the name escapes me, they had that defensive end who led the preseason in sacks, and they traded him to Dallas. And when I
remember that.
And as soon as I hang up, Caesar Rayford, was that it? Maybe.
I think that's right.
Yeah, too many names. I try not to learn names in preseason because once they're in your head, generally they don't go away. And then I've got 40 years of names in my head that don't matter. But it's there's always people that pop up, and go back and see how many times a leading rusher and a leading receiver in preseason don't even make the roster because of the way Jonathan Taylor's had 1 carry for 9 yards. I don't think he plays at Cincinnati. I always treat him like Edgerrin James. I want to see him get hit once, and he really didn't get hit on the play. Get hit once, so your first really significant hit's not against the Dolphins in September. But I will be surprised if very many frontline players play at Cincinnati. I think the fear of the concern of injuries is just too drastic to put people out there until it matters.
Caesar Rayford, by the way, signed as a free agent with the Colts in 2013. 4 months later, he was traded to the Cowboys after a notable preseason, and then was released by the Cowboys 11 months later after being on their practice squad, and then played for, now how about this for a rundown of teams? Calgary Stampeders, Montreal Alouettes, Jacksonville Sharks, Minnesota Vikings, Los Angeles Kiss, Saskatchewan Roughriders, and the Tampa Bay Storm.
If you're Caesar, don't you have jerseys from each one of those teams?
Especially the Los Angeles Kiss of the Arena League, owned by Gene Simmons. Hell yes, you do.
Yeah, that's what I say. Preseason, just how many? I remember who was the left-handed quarterback from Kentucky?
Jared Lorenzen,
the big guy. Yeah,
the late one, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah, I know. So, but that's what's cool about the preseason is so many guys get a chance to really have their moment, and some of them will never have another moment, and some Gary Brackett, for crying out loud, undrafted and all that, and he made the most of Jack Doyle, guys undrafted, and when they get their moment, they seized it. Many more guys don't. But I think there's so many great stories in training camp and preseason.
Ironically, the guy that didn't seize its name is Caesar. That's the irony. But he got a ton of jerseys. Thank you, Eddie. Chap, appreciate it, man. When do you think we'll have an answer at this quarterback thing?
Tomorrow. It just needs to be tomorrow. It just for Shane to stand up there tomorrow and say we're still deciding. I don't know. I just think, again, I think he knew Saturday night what he was going to do or what he's going to do. I think it just serves everybody's purpose. It just, hey, if the Browns can name Joe Flacco starting quarterback, these guys can name their guy. So let's take that approach.
All right, Chap. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
You guys be well.
All right, Mike Chappell, CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. It is preseason, but the Fantasy League draft is a week from tonight, Eddie, for the Query & Company Fantasy League draft,
It is
right?
indeed.
Chicago's Pizza in Greenwood. We still have how many spots to fill up?
6.
239-1070 is the telephone number. Are we doing show trivia?
We can do that, yeah.
Show trivia, so you've got a show. You have to prove that you've listened to this program before. But if you would like to be in our Fantasy League, we will have prizes for the Fantasy League winner. We will have pizza at Chicago's Pizza a week from tonight, so you got to be able to come down at 7 o'clock for the draft. And you've got to be a listener of this program. And that right there rules out probably 98% of most people in the general population. So you got a good chance of, competing. 239-1070, we'll do it next. So we will do a live fantasy football draft 1 week from tonight at 7 p.m. at the Chicago's Pizza in Greenwood. Try to keep out the paparazzi. And we have how many spots remaining? We have 6 spots to fill. Is that correct?
That is accurate.
Okay, now, you have to at least prove that you have listened somewhat to this radio show. And that's the challenge. Now, Eddie, we have callers lined up. Who would you like to begin with?
Do we want to reward people who got in first?
You mean in terms of the callers?
Yeah, they were quickest to call in. And
But I think that actually the phone routing system has as much to do with that as anything. I think they all
maybe
are getting in at the same time. I'll let you pick, though. You talk to everybody. You tell me which one we're starting with.
Well, I know Dennis, who's on line 1. He is a P1 listener, Jake. So if we want Dennis in the league again, he was in it last year. We need to up the trivia challenge for him.
This is Dennis the Menace, right?
Yes.
Dennis has already won one of our challenges. He was Dennis, you actually, if I'm not mistaken, I made a home delivery to you. Is that correct?
That you did, sir.
And you won. You were one of the winners in our NCAA tournament challenge. I want to say that you got it. Was it Arkansas hat?
You are correct. I proudly wear my Razorback hat.
So do you actually wear your Razorbacks hat?
I've worn it a few times golfing, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Are you on a job site right now?
I am. I am a dump truck driver. I'm backing up to dump my load of sand at Shelby Materials.
Just so you know, Dennis, for just the sake of everybody's comfort level, if you could avoid saying you're getting ready to dump your load on the program, we would all be gratefully appreciative. All right. Dennis, that alone gets you in. You clearly know the show if you know how much I love the horn. All right, we'll get Dennis. Will be one of them. So we only have 2. How many spots? We have 6 total,
We have
right?
5
So we have
left.
All right, let's go to Todd. Todd, welcome to the show.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen.
By gentlemen, are you referring to both Eddie and myself?
Eddie, yeah, both of you guys.
Okay.
For sure.
Todd, have you called the program before?
Yes, I have.
Do you have a position within the company that we've appointed you?
I think Mr. Cook gave me a position at one point, but I think I lost that position somewhere along the way. So,
Okay.
I think it might have been a hospitality position.
Okay. Well, we're going to give you a trivia question to show, although that alone shows that you kind of do know the show. But I'm going to give you a trivia question. You ready?
Yes, sir.
With a margin of error of 4, so 4 on either side, can you tell me the number of female listeners of this program?
Oh, boy. 11.
Ooh. Todd, man, you're killing me. You're selling me short there. How about this? Who is my favorite player currently on the Indianapolis Colts?
Your favorite player on the Colts?
Yep.
Ulysses Bentley IV.
Yes. And by the way, Todd, so get his information, Eddie. Todd's in. We have breaking news in terms of a show announcement. Thursday on the program, we will be joined by none other than future Indianapolis Colt running back extraordinaire Ulysses Bentley IV, who will join the program. Ulysses Bentley IV joins the program. Who is next in this fun-filled extravaganza, Eddie?
Let's go with Radford.
Radford.
Yeah.
Radford, what's up?
Yeah. Nothing much. Listening to the best radio broadcast in America.
Now, Radford, you have a great radio voice, Radford. Have you been told that before?
Yes, I have several times.
Can you do me a favor?
Yep.
Because you have a fabulous radio voice, and I'm going to basically milk the cow for free here, can we get you to say, "This is Radford, and I'm enjoying Query & Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan"? Can we get you to do that real quick?
Yeah.
Here we go.
This is okay. This is Radford, and I'm listening to Query & Company on 1070 The Fan.
Now, Radford, hold on. It's not 1070. I can appreciate
okay, yeah,
that.
I know it's
You're
changed.
an
Okay.
older fella, Radford. I can tell. You're
93.5.
going back old school on me here. Now, we're going to do this one more time. This is Radford, and I'm in the company of Query & Company on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. All right, as you were.
That's pretty long, man. I'm too jacked up to remember all that, to be honest with you.
All right, here's a better question. True or false, at some point in your life, you have owned a T-shirt, sweatshirt, or hat from Radford University. True or false?
That's false, but my brother does because he's about 50 and I'm 35. But I haven't bought one, but my brother wears it all the time.
All right. And Radford is in what state? Do you know where it's located?
Virginia.
That's impressive that you know that. Okay, Radford, I need you to prove for me in some way, shape, or form, though, that you're a regular listener of this program.
Okay. I can just start complimenting you a whole bunch back, and I'll probably get me right in there.
Give me one thing about this show that has been said or that you like that we would go, okay, yeah, you're old school. You're in.
Let me think of something great. Okay. Golly, I'm trying to think of. All I can think. Okay. Now I'm stressing out.
Okay, how about this,
Radford?
What's the name of my cat?
Golly, man.
Who's my favorite college football team?
Now I feel like an idiot.
Okay.
I feel like I should know this stuff.
Okay, how about this? Which local sports team do I attend the most games of?
I feel like I know something better than this, man. Like, here, golly, hold on, man. Let me just
hang on, Radford.
More
We're gonna put you on hold real quick and let you. We'll come back to you. We'll let Radford get his bearings real quick, and then we'll get to Troy. Troy, can you answer any of those questions that I just asked Radford?
And please only answer one.
I think I heard a couple of them. I'm gonna guess. You go to the Fever games the most.
Troy, man. All right, let's go to Casey. Casey, help us out, man. Can you answer any of those questions? This is a terrible indictment on this radio program. Our boss might be listening and is like, we got to get rid of this guy. Nobody listens to him.
Yes, Clemson. Clemson's your favorite college football team.
Yes. All right, Casey. Casey, you're in. Casey at the bat. Let's go back to Radford one more time. All right, Radford, did you think of anything that will indeed prove that you listened to this radio show before today?
I think I do because it was around like Halloween. Is your cat? Is the cat's Boo?
Yes, Radford.
Let's go.
All right, Radford, you're in. Thank you. Mercifully, you're in. So that puts us to how many, Eddie? We
need two more.
All right, we'll do two more at a later time. I appreciate everybody calling in for it. We'll come back, put a tie on everything from today, and hand it off to John next. By the way, I didn't mention the harrowing experience that I had last night, Eddie.
Did you say heroin?
Harrowing. Well, that too, but
okay,
not literally. I'm saying like that would be equally harrowing. This is. I mean, I'm not. This is not a happy thing. Hopefully, it ends up with a good resolution. But last night late.
How late we talking?
11:30ish.
Oh, so early into your night.
Correct. I think I've mentioned before, there is a cat that near a local business near where I live that I discovered. He was a feral cat at the time when he was a little kitten when I first noticed him. And myself and two of the employees of the said establishment began feeding this cat to the point where he's basically now a community cat because he'll let us pet him. I mean, he's a cool little fella. And fortunately, one of those two employees is actually on Wednesday taking him and moving him indoors.
Aww.
So he's, which I'll be honest, I mean, I'm happy that he's going to be getting a home.
Are you going to miss him?
Yes, for sure. But last night, it was my turn in the rotation to go feed him and, pet him and whatnot. And I was in a parking lot on North Keystone, and a car pulled into the parking lot, and there's a lot of traffic that goes in and out, even though this was after hours of the business. And the car kind of came in the parking lot for a minute and then drove off. I didn't think much of it. But then about a couple of minutes later, I looked over and I saw a dog in the parking lot. And this is, I hate saying this, but my thought was, did that dog just get dumped? Did somebody just dump a dog? So I went to approach the dog, which was wearing a collar. I could tell that it was a smaller, either pit bull or pit breed of some sort, and had that like hip dysplasia where like he kind of ran a little bit awkward. And I hope that's not the result of some sort of an abuse. I don't know. But as I got close, it growled and then began to run away. And so I thought, okay. Went back, helped out, petted the cat, made sure he knew where, got his food. He started eating, whatever. And so I was leaving. And as I was leaving, the dog was still standing in the parking lot. So I one more time approached just to try to get his attention. And he took off running from me and then began running literally in the middle of the road, southbound down Keystone, the wrong way. He was in the northbound lane running in the middle of the road. So there was no traffic, so I was driving the wrong way on Keystone, mind you, trying to get him to get into my car because it was terrifying because I'm like, somebody is going to come and this is going to happen right in front of me. I managed to get him. He eventually just got petered out from running so hard, ran into to a local business off of the road, thank goodness. And I'm like, okay, we've gotten him off of Keystone now, but now what do I do? Because I couldn't, there's nowhere to call to take him that late at night. And so I thought, well, my biggest concern here is I want him off of Keystone. So I called another buddy of mine that I know is a night owl, and I said, look, I've got him right here where he's not going to run away.
The heck, I didn't get a call.
And so, well, this guy's also lives close.
Okay.
And I said, can you stop at a gas station and buy a thing of dog food and come here? So he shows up and goes, oh, no, I just brought a burger patty. I'm like, no, dude, we need to leave like a thing of dog food overnight so that he does not leave this area until this business shows up in the morning and we can let them know, hey, there's a dog here, and try to help him out. So we ended up getting some like dog chow or whatever, put it in a bowl. This dog went through like 3 bowls of it in about 2 minutes. We left the remainder of the food. I called the businesses after hours. They did answer, and I said, listen, when you get here at 6 a.m, hopefully there's going to be a dog sitting on your porch, and, hopefully you can call. Unfortunately, and listen, I appreciate and love the work that people do for dogs in terms of animal shelters, but, I have a feeling what the sad fate may be for him if he goes to one of the bigger shelters. But I put him up on Indie Lost Pet and that kind of thing. I have not followed up to find out what they were, if in fact he was there in the morning. But hopefully he he made it through the night, because it was when he was running down Keystone, man, it was awful. And I don't know for certain, because he had the collar on, I don't think that means anything in terms of a dumped animal, but if you are somebody who just, I understand that people, whether it be for finances, whether it be out of fear, whether it be any number of things that you determine that you cannot keep a dog, but if you are dumping them in a parking lot in the middle of the night, you are literally the lowest form of human being on earth. I mean, there are those in the same category, but they would not be lower than that. In terms of the show on Thursday, Eddie, Ulysses Bentley IV, I'm kind of pumped up about this. I'm a little starstruck. Right?
You're welcome. You're welcome, Jake.
Do we know what time he's going to be joining the show?
It'll be after practice on Thursday, so time is to be determined.
Do you think he'll be offended by my voice? I'm a little worried about that.
Are you going to do the voice for him?
I may ask him if he likes it. Yeah, I mean, it would be unfair if I did not. J&B has arrived. Big show lined up, John?
Big. Stephen Holder and Zach Kiefer. I will say this about Zach Kiefer. I'd rather just kind of talk football, because I am 1,000% worn out on anything Andrew Luck. Nothing against Zach. Great writer, but he's got an Andrew Luck story. And am I the only one? I can't be the only one, right?
Is there
anything else? I'm
A lot of the reaction from people were people that clearly are still upset with Andrew Luck.
I'm not upset. I just don't want to hear it. And I'll end up talking about it, I'm sure, and there's nothing against Zach whatsoever. I mean, you go out there, you get that. I think we all would, right? I mean, hell, if he would say, hey, I want to come on your show, Jake.
Right,
you'd have him on your show. I would too. But I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of it. But we've got this big quarterback thing going on around here.
Luck did say that that originally he wanted to play until he was 45.
Did he?
Yeah.
Sure he did.
I mean,
now, was that like a fleeting moment, you think, when he was vacuuming the carpet and listening to Florence and the Machine?
Who do you think he listens to, Andrew Luck? What's his
Florence and the Machine?
All 90s on Saturday night, right?
Awesome, buddy. Great.
Did you play any Temple of the Dog? Did you play any Oasis?
I did not. You better go, because Eddie's trying to wrap you up. I want to get in trouble. Don't get me in trouble.
Next, Zach Kiefer at 4, and we will be with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query Company.